We have no dramatic music this time, but let's get ready for our second Aaron of the night. Aaron Crawford is here, frequent speaker at SecKC, and he has technically two talks wrapped into one. He's going to release some new stuff that you've never seen before, but will probably want to go home and use. And he's also going to talk about some of the broader implications of some of the jobs that we do, or maybe that you're interested in. For example, how do you deal with the fact that you got your entire building's internet turned off because you decided to run a scan, maybe with some permission, maybe it just didn't go as planned, but then half the building's kind of pissed because they can't get their email anymore. I still had my job. Hooray! All right, let's give Aaron a big round of applause.
So, I know it was listed, and I'm not going to do any of that tonight. So instead, we're bringing back the 5-minute tool talk real quick. And this is something I wanted to bring to you guys and wanted to make sure that you all could do. So we're going to do this in 5 minutes or less. This is open for anyone and everyone. So pick a tool. Doesn't matter if you want to show that Nmap has a T-timing section of up to T11, you can do that. It doesn't matter what tool you have. We just want you to come out, show a tool, help everyone out, share what you know, show something cool. Create a 5-minute talk. If you don't want to do a full talk, create just a 5-minute talk to discuss a tool, show you how you use it and everything. Submit the talk to SecKC. Go out to seckc.org and submit the talk. And then share the fun with everyone by presenting the tool. So to bring this back, I wanted to bring a tool and something new to you guys. So, how many of you know robots.txt? So this is the new hotness. This is ads.txt. It's for all the approved advertisers out there and third parties. And it's absolutely awesome. IAB Tech Lab created it as a standard. It's pretty much going to be our next tool for the next few years if you're doing web apps and web assessments. It's awesome. But don't worry, we're going to have stuff for social engineering with it as well. So no matter what you do on any website, in the root directory, you'll have the domain name such as www.seckc.org, then /ads.txt. If you want an example while we're messing around right now during this talk, go to cnn.com/ads.txt. The BBC even has it. It's everywhere and everyone's using it. It's great because it has a consolidation of all the approved third parties that website or that entity deals with. So if you're into social engineering or social operations, that's a juicy target list for phishing. That's a juicy target list for impersonation because that's all the approved groups that target deals with. It's also awesome because it has all the subdomains and a large chunk of subdomains in there as a standardization. So if you want to, you don't have to run DNS brute to get some really juicy stuff. Just go to /ads.txt. This is also supposed to be all the approved users, all the approved information, and third parties that deal with advertising. So there's a lot of great stuff inside this. The recon potential is just awesome for this too. So as you can see here, this is CNN. At the bottom, it's always going to be the same since it's a standard. You have the subdomains. There's a large chunk of subdomains that don't always show up. They're always going to be in ads.txt file. It's awesome. Up above, you're going to see all the configurations of the groups they deal with, who they are approved to sell advertising with or through those third parties. Their Google ID, the Google AdSense, all those IDs are going to be there as well. Again, this is awesome for social operations. So every single one's going to contain a standard format. No matter what you do, no matter what you encounter, version 1.0 and above has a standard format where you can get all the information that you want, and they're starting to include new bits of information in these. So, wouldn't you like to be able to find these in a fun, new, automated way, easy to use? There's now a Metasploit module available for this. You can download this right now. It's available for use. It'll go out and find the ads.txt. It uses the only variables of R hosts, so if you want to, you can include multiple hosts to search through. And then you can change the amount of threads that it uses to go through, so you can go through, run it faster, allocate more resources and whatnot. But this is great for you to run through as your preliminary part of an assessment. You can go out there and pound a hole, section out there and see, does it have ADS-TXT? And if it does, it's always going to be in that root directory. You can pull it up and find out all sorts of stuff for your engagement. All you have to do is, once you've downloaded that from the GitHub repository, throw it in as an auxiliary module into Metasploit and run. This has not been released. This is the first official public release of this tool. You do not have to create a new tool to do a tool talk at SecKC, but I wanted to make sure that we had something special and fun and drop something new. The other fun thing about this that I am not showing tonight is, as you've seen with this file, it's all the automated whitelisting of ads and whatnot. Yes, this can be weaponized. Yes, this can be turned into a botnet. Yes, this can be turned into a worm. I'm not going to show you that. You can play with that on your own. But again, play with this, have some fun. I want to encourage people to go out and do tool talks for the upcoming events and meetings. Just submit a talk, whether it's simply using Nmap, whether it's using Nikto, or something that you think is simple and benign. It's meaningful to share it with everyone here to save time, get people started, have a starting point. No matter how simple you think it is, it's important to present it. So give it a shot, and I would encourage everyone to do a tool talk from here on out. That's why we're bringing it back. So with that, I'm going to shorten this other talk up into a topic that's normally a lot longer. And one thing that we usually don't think about is what happens after the assessment. What happens after you do pen testing? What happens at night when you go home? What happens when you walk away when the pen test is done? So no one's found the Easter egg in this picture about who I am yet, so I'll put it online. You can have some fun with it, but we don't have time. We have less than a few minutes here to finish this up, so come find me after the talk if you want to know more about me. So security is kind of tricky because we always complicate it with technology. And at the end of the day, security is an emotion and a human state. That's all it is. Your sense of security is different from Bill's, which is different from Corey's, which is different from Brian's, which is different from the other Aaron's. We each have our own personal designation of security and how that pertains to us. No matter what, at the end of the day, security is built on trust. And we tend to forget that with all the technical elements. And if you run social operations, this is your bread and butter, knowing that you're violating those trust models, you're trying to get into places, you're trying to fool people, impersonate people, and do everything violating trust. But a lot of what we do, we need to maintain trust with clients, with individuals, with people in public. That's one of the great things about SecKC here is we extend our community out. We open it up and we expose it to everyone, and we show what the hacker community, what the InfoSec community, the Freaker community, everything else is about. But at the end of the day, this is all about trust. So we always want to make sure that we keep that in mind, whether you're breaking in somewhere or whether you're going home at night. A lot of people come up to me and go, hey, you know what, I do social operations such as social engineering and everything, but when I get home at night, no one trusts me, no one will allow me to give them a present. True story, my own dad will not let me give him anything that plugs into a USB port. He will not touch it, he knows better. That's changed though over the years that a lot of my family members will allow me to give them USB pluggable things because I have a hard designation as to where work starts and where work stops. Most people know me that I'm a mercenary. At the end of the day, if I'm not getting paid, I'm not doing anything. I'm not going to hand you anything that's going to cause problems unless you're handing me a paycheck. I put a hard stop and a hard barrier in place with most people. And that's how I've had to build up trust over the years, so people, even here, will understand if I hand you something, it's not weaponized, it's not bad, it's actually benign. I set up a series of things that allow you to have trust and validation, and that's what you have to start doing in your life outside of work. Part of that is leaving work at work and setting up a hard barrier. Whenever you set up an engagement, you need to think this way. You need to think about three things: the client, the human element, and the company, your company involved. Always have those three things compartmentalized and at the center of everything that you do, because you need to maintain trust and the barriers in between them. Such as the client. You don't want to go through and pull a fire alarm at a client to clear someone out of the building. That does not measure anything within the scope. It violates the law, and it violates trust models that people have in place, such as you hear the fire alarm, you know to walk out in an orderly fashion to leave the building that's on fire. You don't want to violate that trust model and use that as part of your assessment. So always keep that in mind. The other thing that we forget about with the human element is how damaging and how fragile it is throughout our work. How many of you work at home or work remote? How many of you don't see another human being for like days on end because of your job? That does start to take a toll on you over time, and it can impact you whether you're trying to reintegrate back into the workplace or just starts to drive you crazy. I personally turn on the radio or TV so I hear some sort of human contact when I'm working alone at times. You always have to take that into consideration. If you're working with a team, make sure everyone on your team is aware of what's going on, is in contact, you're talking to them, and they're all kept aboard so that no one's just kind of out there on their own. The problem is when we forget the human element within security operations, it's something we can't recover from. It takes years and years and years of trust and building and resources to build up that human element. Think about when you lose someone on your team, or someone gets fired or someone quits. It takes a lot to train someone back up and get them back into operational mode where that person who left is at. So it's always keep in mind where things are at. Again, I said barriers earlier. Always set up barriers throughout your life, especially in security operations. You always want to set up something such as telling your friends at home, hey, I will not hack your Facebook account or your ex-girlfriend's Facebook account because I'm not on the clock. I set up a hard barrier of work being when I'm on the clock and when I get paid. You should do the same as well so people aren't afraid, they're not upset, they're not intimidated by what you do. And a lot of times people don't understand what we do. We're all a bunch of nerds at the end of the day. So set up barriers not only with visual and physical, but also set up verbal barriers such as no, or no thank you, or no, I will not hack your ex-girlfriend's Facebook account. Personal identity is another thing we need to keep track of that we all lose. We suck horribly in this industry when it comes to marketing and branding. We do very well in excelling on social media and branding ourselves and branding things, but we don't market ourselves well. A lot of the times in this industry, we confuse personal identity with a marketing message or a branding message. Those need to be separated out. If you want to know an example of this, think about someone big or popular or someone well-known in the industry. Think about where they work. Think about what they do and see if you can separate those three elements and see if you can pick out details from those. If you can't, that's someone who's failing at that. You need to create a separation of your personal identity and brand as well as your own life. Because a lot of these things will bleed together very easily in our business. They'll contribute to burnout and all sorts of other horrible things and mental issues, and we need to start looking at that a little harder. The biggest thing that you can do is you can always say no thank you or no to someone, or say no to establish a barrier to create a separation between home, work, and other things. Again, maintaining trust is a key element because that's all our entire industry is based upon. One thing I always do is I run out when I meet new clients is I run around in a suit. I get made fun of a lot, but I want to show respect and trust to my clients, showing that, hey, I'm here, I respect you enough to get out of bed, put some clothes on, and put a suit on. I do that to help maintain trust. Also, communication helps maintain trust. Communicating nonstop to both like your clients as well as those around you is key. To everyone who always asks, hey, how do you keep people from not trusting you or keep people from continuing to trust you, the key to that is maintaining trust, and the easiest way to maintain trust is through communications. So just telling people what you're doing, how you're doing it, why you're doing it, and what the barriers and the boundaries are for that. Boundaries are only communicated through open communication and trust. Again, I'm trying to keep this as short as possible, so I apologize. The other thing is, a lot of these things we don't consider in our operations and our security assessments can follow us home. I used to do social engineering engagements and not really pay attention too much to what happened. I didn't really pay attention to the verbiage as to what happened at the end of the engagement as to what the client did. Moving forward, I learned to start asking the client what happens after the engagement, what happens after the fish, what happens afterwards, because I always inject now from here on out that no one gets fired. Back in the day, I didn't consider what would happen, and I had a security guard greet me at my own driveway at home after an engagement, and he was pretty upset because he got fired and his only means of income was terminated because of my security assessment. So always be aware that this stuff can follow you home. That's also why you need to add boundaries and barriers and separations in what you do. Add hard, defined boundaries. If you're working with a client, suggest to them rather than termination, point out to the fact that once that person is found faulty in a phishing engagement or once they're fooled in a social operation, that's going to become an advocate to help them with their security awareness program. Terminating them is going to cost them a lot of money. It's also going to be something that can bite you in the butt later on. So another thing to help add barriers physically to you is phone numbers. We take for granted, we all use our own phones. Sometimes we have company phones, but sometimes we use whatever is easiest available to us. The easiest way to help protect yourself is when you're on engagements, when you're dealing with clients, when you're dealing with other people, pick up burner apps. These are great. This is like having a handful of SIM chips in your hand. You can sit there, change the phone numbers, you can switch phone numbers, you can dish phone numbers, you can text, you can SMS, you can do all the fun stuff you can. And it's great because it all terminates to your phone. You don't have to get another phone, you don't have to get another SIM chip. It's awesome. So I highly suggest that you start using some of these things to add a layer of privacy and anonymity to your daily life when you're doing assessments. So if you need to, you can start an assessment and hand out these phone numbers on a burner app to the client, to the point of contact. It all terminates to your cell phone, but when the engagement's over, you can trash that phone number, you can burn it so that no one else has that, so you don't have a security guard following you home and greeting you in the driveway at night. Another thing that we run into a lot is legal issues. In our business, we are literally forcing things to do and operate in a way that they should not be and they are not intended. Part of that is that we end up violating laws that we may not know about from time to time. In social operations, we sometimes take for granted that we're going to record phone calls or we're going to videotape something. You can't do that a lot of times. You need to look up and see if you're allowed to record the conversation. And do not use Google. Google and the internet is not your legal friend or replacement for a lawyer. An example of this is the recording laws. If you Google recording laws in a lot of states, such as Delaware, you will find that there are journalism links that state, hey, it's a single party consent state in Delaware, meaning that only one person has to be aware of the recording, which is you, so you can record Bill without having to let Bill know that you're recording. However, there are privacy laws that supersede that, and there are other laws that supersede that. So Delaware is a all-party consent state, and you wouldn't know that by looking on the internet. You need a lawyer. It's really hard to find lawyers in our industry and business because sometimes, one, you can't afford them, or two, you may not have something available, but you do. One of the best resources I found is find a local college with a law school, and they have free legal clinics. There's some here in town. KU has a great one. K-State does. Even Washburn University in Topeka has law clinics and law stuff to help you at their law schools. Bar associations are great too. Reach out to them, ask for recommendations, tell them what you're doing. They'll give you a list of people to call. AAVVO.com is a great shopping list to go around and start looking at local law and everything. And in our case, if you haven't donated yearly already this year to the EFF, you should. The EFF is a great resource for us. It helps protect us, helps put out a lot of resources in the community for security and whatnot to keep people like us out of jail and out of prison, which is great. But always look up and get legal help first, because there is not a replacement for actual lawyers and legal help. You can play a lawyer through Google and look stuff up, but it's not going to help you out in the long term. Another thing that we need to look into more and more now is, and I'm sorry this is a short talk and I'm not going to get into mental health stuff, but this is more of, we need to set up more support systems in our community. We are so lucky to have SecKC here. This is one of the world's largest security meetups that happens monthly. We have a support system here where you can help others, you can reach out to others, you can ask questions, you can network tonight. If you haven't, I would introduce yourself to at least 2 strangers tonight, because there's a bunch of cool people in this room. But in addition to that, go to local meetups. There's OWASP, there's all sorts of other meetups and things around here that you can reach out and find others that have similar situations that you do, or other issues and problems and things that you run into. But try also going outside of your job and outside of the bubble that you have created by your job. Go to something like, I suggest trying to go to the ISC Squared meetings that happen around here, or try going to ISSA meetings locally, and see what happens, see who you can reach out to and set up a new support system and extend your network to help you out. In addition to that, this is something I believe very strongly in, not only for the contractors that I hire and work with, but for my employees. We set up telemedicine presence for counseling. In our jobs in security, we run across some pretty harsh things, whether it's forensics. If you're in forensics, you may run across some interesting things on people's computers. Other jobs and other positions, we're keeping really crazy hours. You're working different hours, you're working different tasks, you're doing different things, and it takes a toll on you. You're also dealing with content in a highly competitive environment that no one else, no other industry has. So you need to take care of yourself both physically and mentally. And there's a lot more resources now in this day and age to help you out mentally. BetterHelp and Talkspace are two things to start out with and look into. You can actually sit up there and sign up and do basically like a Skype meeting with a licensed psychologist and practitioner and set things up. So if you're afraid of leaving the house, if you're afraid of talking to a stranger about issues or problems, these are great resources to work with. I hired these out and use these as benefits for employees so that they have things they can deal with, they can work through stuff, they have this available. It's a great resource. There are hundreds of them now. These are two just to look at and get started with, but don't discount them because they're a great resource to use and utilize because you might be doing things that take a toll on you and you may not realize it with your job. Part of burnout that we don't diagnose in this industry is the lack of fulfillment. And sometimes in this job and industry, it gets really harsh where you're trying to do stuff, you're trying to get management to understand that for God's sake, why do we have open Wi-Fi connected to our main network, connected to our production on a flat network? And you're always fighting an uphill battle and a losing battle day in, day out in this industry, and it can take a toll on you and contribute to burnout because you don't have that fulfillment of completing things. You don't have that fulfillment and satisfaction of getting somewhere. And that's where I encourage people to reach out and get some help just to discuss with someone, talk to a professional. You might find some resources and things that you didn't even realize before. And with that, I was trying to put two talks together really quick, really short. If you have any questions, find me running around, just come bug me and whatnot. But again, I expect the SecKC.org website to crash tonight with all the submissions for tool talks because all of you can submit a tool talk. It is easy. You don't have to write something new, but submit something.